The following is an Operation Podcast production.
I think the first thing is to ask yourself, what are the holes that need to be filled in your own life? So for me, it was I didn't want to go to bed after midnight or 3 a.m., which is when I would go out dancing. And dancing, of course, is the most healing, celebratory technology that exists. It moves through struggles, moves through suffering. This is what you do. This is what your life's work is about. And that dance is the technology. It's a healing technology. It's an ancient technology.
And that's really where so many of us, the work begins to re-embody ourselves. So
you gotta remember, right? Like literally the word remember.
Yeah.
Remember yourself back together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that just changes our entire ecosystem. We're not even emanating the energy that is authentically ours because there's so many different hormones raging inside of our bodies. And then we're attracting and magnetizing all the wrong friends, all the wrong lovers, because our bodies are now emitting different hormones, right? And so it's just paying attention to our bodies and not just, being cut off at the mind. The belonging is not just human to human, but it's the mind to body, body to soul. It's really belonging to yourself first so that you can go out and belong to the world.
If you're like me, coffee is more than just a morning bevy. It's a ritual. For me, it powers up my mind and body, but really, no joke, it satisfies my soul. Whether you love coffee as much as I do, or you just grab a cup now and again to get by, I've got a hot tip for you. Strong coffee. Seriously, write that down. Strong coffee. This company blends fair trade coffee with grass-fed collagen protein and MCT oil to support joint health and provide sustained energy without the crash. It has so much going for it that other coffees don't, like 15 grams of protein, 5 grams of MCT oil, 250 milligrams of adaptogens like L-theanine and reishi mushrooms to reduce stress and enhance focus. There are no refined sugars. It is lactose-free, all while being delicious. Have it hot, ice in seconds. Visit strongcoffeecompany.com. Use code LAMN15 for 15% off every purchase. You're welcome.
Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now.
I have to make sound and wiggle and jump and shake and twist and shimmy. I don't know. I'm goo goo gaga right now. Look, this is it. This is it. This is the woman. This is Belong, the book by Miss Radha. Personally, I'm so in love with her. I adore her. I have such a girl crush. And I'm so grateful because this is the third time we've tried to do this podcast. Third time's the charm. The stars have officially aligned for us to do this. And I'm so grateful. Thank you, Radha, for being here. This is the founder, co-founder, but just mama. This is mama empowerment of Daybreaker. She is the visionary behind Daybreaker. She's a visionary behind Thinks, co-founder of Thinks, the period panties, the menstruation panties, just breaking ground all over the place. She has started the Belong Center, which is a nonprofit around ending the epidemic of loneliness. I could just go on and on and on. She's a fashion guru to me. I can't even. But welcome, Radha!
Yay, Alexis, 2025. It's our year. Third time's a charm. I'm so sorry. But here we are. Honestly, we're in a new moon. This is the moment. And I feel like 2025 is our year to spread our message together.
Let's go. I'm all about spreading the message together. And I'm really, I am taking the privilege really seriously of having this time with you so that people who are tuning in have the opportunity to get to know you, to get to know your story, to get to know your work in the world even more than they perhaps already do, because what you have done and are doing is so magnificent and carries so much impact, ripples of impact, ROI on all the work you're doing. So, as we do on this podcast, I want to go back to the beginning, right? Because I say this so often on the podcast to sort of set the tone that our mess becomes our message. And I always like to look backward on the timeline to see where the seeds were planted for all of this beautiful growth. Because so much of how we get to these, magnificent places of being able to make an impact is because we've been impacted in some way. And so I want to look back and take us to little Radha, take us to the roots of Radha, and show us where and how your story began.
Well, first of all, wow. Thank you, Alexis. I love you.
Love you.
So yeah, my mother's from Japan. My father's from India. I'm French Canadian. So, sort of really, I moved to New York to play soccer in college, and I went to Cornell, and just sort of, I would say that the tapestry of all the cultures that I was raised in, between, again, sushi, curry, Canadian bacon and American pie. I don't know what's America's food. The burger. I just think the confluence of all of these cultures, I think, has really inspired my work. And and I guess I think, to bring all of us together, to unite our communities together, red and blue, just the whole world. I think that's really such an important raison d'etre, and started from, kind of my cellular structure of just being, I think, a citizen of the world.
And what was that like? Being a blend, a hybrid, a merging of so much difference, right?
Yeah, I think I didn't belong anywhere, and I think I belonged everywhere. I think it's one of those things where you could either choose to decide, okay, I'm not accepted by the Japanese culture fully because I don't look Japanese, even if my mother is, or I don't fully look Indian because even if my father is. So I really didn't always know, kind of physically where I fit in. But I think because I had a twin sister, I'm also an identical twin. I think.
Y'all, they're so identical. They're so identical.
Yeah, just having a buddy to laugh at my jokes, and
Yeah.
always sort of someone to fall back on, having someone who just cheerleaded my ideas, I think also set the ground for who I became. I actually feel like when you ask me who, where I came from, I would say that the ultimate root of, who I am and why I became so focused on community is because I was in community since I was in my mother's womb, and my, as an identical twin in her belly. And so I think I didn't really feel all the impact of being a blended kind of human because I had an identical twin who was also blended with me. So we kind of, while we didn't belong anywhere, we belonged together everywhere. So I sort of got to feel and experience both sides of life pretty early on.
That's amazing, because I see the relationship that the two of you have. I've been able to bear witness to that, and it is so personified when we're in presence with you, to see that bond and that relationship, and it speaks highly to perspective being everything, right? Somebody who feels like they don't necessarily belong anywhere, but they belong everywhere because they have something that anchors them into a sense of security, into a sense of self-appreciation and awareness and acknowledgement. And she was that mirror for you. And that's really, really beautiful.
I think just to add to, what's happening in LA right now with, your community, our community, just so many friends have lost their homes. One of the most beautiful messages that I've seen across the internet is, home is where the heart is. And while, we may have lost everything, while the fires, burned it all down, we have each other, we have our community, we have our family, we have that which matters the most, which is our relationships. And so that's been a beautiful through line to witness over the last few devastating weeks.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm actually going to share something that just happened to me over this past week. So my best friend lost, her home and all of its contents. I mean, she left with almost nothing other than obviously her children and her dogs. And we've been in the aftermath of that and literally starting over. I mean, if you can imagine anybody that hasn't been personally affected by this and like lost their home, if you can imagine, I mean, they have nothing. They don't have underwear. They don't have a toothbrush. They don't have their marriage or birth certificates. I mean, they don't have anything. They're starting over completely. All the stuff is gone. And at the same time, I went to an estate sale for someone who I was very, very close with. She was like a mother to me. And she was such a vivacious woman. And walking through this estate sale and seeing just all these strangers sort of like rummaging through her things and passing judgment on what things were worth and not worth and, whatever. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God, these hold such memories. All of these things that you're just sitting here sort of dismissing hold these massive memories. And it was like the charge, the emotional or electric charge of those material things in her home meant nothing because she wasn't there. She was what brought those things to life.
That's right.
And I went back and forth between being at this estate sale with all the stuff, but the person wasn't there, to then going to my friend who all the stuff was gone, but she was there. And it really brought into perspective like what really matters. And that's not to do a spiritual bypass or like be toxically positive about, well, at least should be grateful about blah, blah, blah. But just to say like to have those in paradox with one another was really profound.
Wow. What a beautiful revelation and beautiful share. I that really resonates so deeply.
Yeah. And the way that I'm seeing people who are still here finding some sort of solace and resilience is through community, which I don't think it's like, of course we had to do this on our third try, because community is more important now than ever. This is the time to be having that conversation. So
that's right.
Divine timing, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So in terms of, I'm going to call back to your book, right? Like in terms of your story, in terms of the impetus of all of this, because so much of what you do does center around community. Whether or not people even realize that menstruation panties center around community, they do. Everything you touch centers around a sense of community and belonging and making people feel comfortable in the essence and in the nature of who they truly authentically are. It's empowering them to be who they are and know that it is not only accepted, it is celebrated, right? And so I'm going back to this. I'm going to just keep showing the book. This is me showing the book again. I keep going back to this book because there is such a beautiful story about how this really like began, right? In terms of you being, in your 30s and having an awakening, looking in the mirror. And it's so apropos for this podcast, right? This is about looking in the mirror. So, and being able to acknowledge and validate without any external gaze. So can you talk us through that story for the people who haven't read this or to just personally hear it from you versus reading it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, since the title of your podcast is Look at Me Now, I would, really want to, express that in my 20s, I really just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to belong. I wanted to do what the culture of New York was doing without actually asking myself what I wanted to do. So I was wearing the mini skirt, standing outside the clubs, waiting in line in the dead of winter in the freezing cold in my little heels to try to get into the club. Or I would go to sports bars on the weekend with friends and drink beer that I didn't want to drink, and, just really spent my 20s sleepwalking. And I just think that that's such an important look at me now moment of just like, in our 20s, we want to fit in and we want to be liked, and we do the things that we think that the culture and society wants from and of us. But then, in my 30s, I realized, I looked at myself in the mirror on my 30th birthday, and I realized, wait a minute, what do I really want? What do I really value today on my 30th birthday? And I was thinking about all the friends that were coming, and they were friends that I liked and I had known, and they knew me, and we were we were a community, but it wasn't, I would say, an intentionally built community. It was a community that sort of I fell into and stumbled into through this partying and drinking phase and just kind of abusing my body phase. And it was in that moment I was like, wow, I'm going to my birthday, my 30th birthday, and I don't really fully align with the values of the people that are celebrating, quote unquote, me, which I want to be grateful for also, but I just want to step more into intentional community, choosing a values aligned, interest aligned community, to really sort of step into my, the real reason for why I'm here. And I think one of the things I think it's so important to underscore is so much of our 20s we spend, or just so much of our lives we spend prioritizing romantic relationship and our work, our professional careers, and we put kind of community in this kind of secondary bucket of if I have time, or sort of when the moment is right, I'll cancel otherwise. As long as I have a date or a professional engagement, I'll focus on that. And it's no wonder we're lonely, because like the idea of swiping on Tinder and swiping on Hinge, or looking up your kind of professional career job description online, is a very lonely process. So what I did was, in my 30s, I began putting community first. And from that place, and really spending my time cultivating community, and there's a lot that I get into in my book and in my, in my workshops and my courses, all that stuff. But it's like, if you begin prioritizing community first, from that place, your friends, your community will introduce you to your romantic partners. They will introduce you to potential professional career opportunities, and then the entire ecosystem of that sort of that discovery, as you're kind of going through, sort of looking for the things that matter to you, they're done in community rather than alone, right? And so when I think about when you're swiping and looking for like loved ones, it's always a very lonely, very exhausting journey. But if you and I were together and we're in a community moment, you're like, oh my God, Alexa, I have 4 amazing men to introduce you to. Let me connect you. So it's like all of a sudden, all of the things that are the most stressful in our lives become community driven, and
what's so interesting is like, when we are not in community, when we are separated, the essence of separation creates competition. It creates threat. It creates a sense of there's not enough. And I've got to get what's mine, in spite of what that might do to another. And it operates in fear, right? It operates in scarcity
versus abundance. Yeah.
Right. And on top of that, there is what it does to us emotionally and physically, even like in and above that, right? So can you talk a little bit about like some of the science even of what loneliness is doing to people?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's a both, physiological and emotional impact for our loneliness, right? So physiologically, in our bodies, having poor social connections is as harmful to your physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's as harmful to as being obese, twice as harmful as obesity. It actually sets off cellular chain reactions in your body such that you heal slower, and you sort of you don't heal as fast as you should. Studies have shown that when you have visitors in the hospital, the likelihood of you leaving the hospital is much, you leave the hospital much faster when you have more visitors coming to visit you, right? Your body actually feels that support, and there's a physiological response to it. And then of course the emotional support, the emotional piece is, 1 in 3 Americans have 0 friends to confide in. This number has tripled in the last 30 years. And we're seeing obviously the depression, anxiety toll, skyrocket. And as psychologists have shared, 75% of depression and anxiety cases are as a result of, what do you think? Loneliness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we tend to medicate anxiety and depression thinking it's other things, but really is you don't have friends, but you can't really medicate for loneliness. So you medicate for anxiety and depression instead. And that's also a big pharma game as well. The more we separate, the more anxious, the more pills I sell. Right. And it's just, not touching the actual sort of foundational issue, which is our loneliness. And, as we look at every social issue we face as a human species, right, from political polarization like we've experienced to gun violence, the opioid epidemic, the obesity epidemic. I mean, every single issue we face as a species ladders down to I don't belong, therefore I will either harm myself or harm others, right, through any of these different issues that become
Oh yeah,
issues
and
that we as a
and
society
this
don't.
does like it has tentacles, right? Into I am not enough, I am too much. It has tentacles into, you and I have talked a lot about like the teen mental health crisis and cyberbullying and in-person bullying that just continues to, drop
Well, the
landmines.
fastest growing community of lonely people are teenagers now. They don't know how to connect. They were stuck on, in COVID, and now they're sort of stuck on their TikTok and Instagram,
In
and
video games,
there's
in my son's
and video
case.
games,
Yeah.
and to your point, that separation creates competition. It
Mm-hmm.
creates anxiety. It creates compare and despair
Mm-hmm.
mentality, and it's just not supportive for anyone. And so, yeah, it's like, how do we actually invite and inspire more social connectedness, more visions for community? And I think that's really what we need to move out of toxic individualism into a culture of true belonging.
And I don't know why this just came into my brain, but I even think about so many people that I know who have passed, and in their passing, they wouldn't pass, they wouldn't go to the light, so to speak, until their community was around them. They waited. It is that primal is kind of what I'm saying.
That's right. I mean, a friend of mine did a study. It was she interviewed thousands of people on their deathbed, and I think she said like 90% of them, when she asked like, "What do you wish you did more of, or where do you wish you were during your time of death?" And it's like either if 90% of people said surrounded by friends,
Mm-hmm.
a few said to be in nature, to be surrounded by the love of nature, which is in many ways our friends.
Yeah.
If we begin to reconnect to the planet in that way,
Mm-hmm.
which so many of us have been disconnected and forgotten our connection to the planet in that more energetic spiritual capacity,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just numbers, carbon footprints, etc. But yeah, I think that at the end of one's life, when you ask anyone on their deathbed what matters to them the most, I'm not going to say how much money they have or how many clothes or how many shoes, right? They'll say it's how many meaningful relationships, how many people are around their room. And you look at funerals, and when there's no one at a funeral for someone, they might have lots of money, lots of whatever, just sort of properties, but no one there to celebrate or to mourn their loss. And so what is wealth really? And this is what we talk about, the wealth of friendship, the wealth of community. How do we actually look at yeah, that sort of as an index of wealth is how many friends, real meaningful relationships do we have, and not how much money we accumulated. Yeah.
Well said. And again, so apropos for what California, Los Angeles specifically, is going through right now as it's being ravaged by these wildfires. So can you also talk us through, there is such a beauty in your story of how Daybreaker came to be from this realization, right? Like how you take something, an awareness, a perspective pivot, right? As you're looking in the mirror and you're going, this isn't it. This isn't it. How you take that moment and those seeds and water them. And rather than have this be a moment of, I'm going to just shame myself and I'm going to torture myself that I've been doing it wrong and I don't know how to get out of it. Instead, taking these moments of real self-awareness, whatever they may be, and turning it into something that's meaningful.
I think that is just sort of cultivating a courageous kind of mindset to recognize that there is no failure, there is no screwing up, it's just learning and experiments. So I think with Daybreaker, I never saw it as something that I needed to win or lose, or it's not venture backed. We have no investors. We built it ticket by ticket, sponsor by sponsor. And so from that place, we're able to really meet the authenticity of its mission. But I think the first thing is to ask yourself, what are the holes that need to be filled in your own life, right? And so for me, it was I didn't want to go to bed after midnight or 3 a.m., which is when I would go out dancing. And dancing, of course, it's the most healing celebratory technology that exists to move through struggle, to move through suffering. I mean, this is what you do. It's what your
Amen.
life's work is about.
Mhm.
And that dance is a technology. It's a healing technology. It's an ancient technology. And this is why I've been so committed to, again, dance in community, communal dance, which, by the way, we're doing a big study with UC Berkeley on this to actually have doctors begin prescribing communal dance experiences in service of anxiety, depression, loneliness, isolation. But yeah, I think, when you find something that matters to you, something that you also doesn't just matter to you, but matters to lots of people. So lots of, and then you recognize that it's something that you could be passionate about for a long time. And you see every experience as an experiment. Again, you don't see it as I failed or I succeeded. So our very first Daybreaker, we threw it. It was first day of snowfall in New York City, December 10th, 2013. I'll never forget. And that morning it was a 6 a.m. dance party, snowing outside, and we were like 4:30 getting the place prepared in the morning, and we were like, no one's coming. It's snowing. It's first snowfall. No one's getting on the subway to show up to our sweet little experimental idea. And we just said to ourselves, you know what? Like, if it worked today, great. If it didn't work today, we'll just pack up our stuff and just go home. And I think it was that sort of feeling of like, okay, like, we're not going to see this as this anxiety inducing kind of shameful experience if it didn't work. Like, it's an art project. It's an experiment. And so, but fortunately, 180 people came to that very first one. And it was such a vibe, and it was so incredible. And everyone just danced without substances with this, as the morning sun was coming up. And those same friends, kind of told 3 of their friends that came to the second one, the third one, and so on and so forth. But again, I think, when I look at where the genesis of Daybreaker came from, which was I was at Burning Man, riding Deep Playa, didn't know anything about Burning Man. It was my first time going, and finding the dancer inside of me for the first time without substances as the sun was coming up, and not needing substances inside of me to like connect with the dance in my body, to actually finally reconnect my mind
To feel
and my
confident
body
and safe
together.
enough in community to be authentically who you are. Like your daughter Soleil has zero issues moving her body on
That's right.
in front of hundreds of people. And, it's about, for you and I, that gets conditioned out of us, right? But it's about reawakening the you that has that permission and that confidence that it's innate.
And it can be in community and can be solo. Like in
Absolutely.
this case, for example, like I got lost. I think I was still a little bit shy to dance with my friends around me, believe it or not. This is, 2012. I was 33 years old, actually. I just still didn't feel comfortable to dance in my own body at 33 years old. And I remember just having the courage, because all my friends, like my 5 friends that I came to Burning Man, now I go to Burning Man. It's like I know everyone there. Like I feel like the whole Daybreaker community goes to Burning Man every year. But back then I knew literally 4 other people. There was my twin sister and 3 other friends in an RV, and they were all sleeping. And it was like 4:00 in the morning. Rode out to Deep Playa, threw my bike down, and just got into my body and danced with my eyes closed, and just didn't care who was seeing me because I didn't know anybody. And then when I opened my eyes, I remember I was crying because I was like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to reconnect to my self-expression. And as I opened my eyes, the sun was coming up, and it was this like wildly awe-inspiring experience to be with the sun dancing and connecting to my body. And then that's kind of the genesis of Daybreaker. It's like kind of like, how do we bring this awe-inspiring experience back to cities where we live, rather than just relegate these types of moments to faraway festival lands. Like, how can we actually bring these life-changing transformational moments into the cities where we live, so it becomes part of our wellness routine. And that's kind of why we started it in New York and then grew it to all the major metros around the world. And now we're like in 40, 50 cities. After the Purple Tour, I mean, I don't even know, 60 cities now, but yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up that point, because it actually is very crucial. And it's something that, with Soul Sway practice, we are constantly up against, is this idea of people, especially right now after COVID, going, we want to be in community, we want to be in person, and us going, that's amazing and wonderful. And yes, we can do that. And it's going to be, a powerful time and experience for you. But there is something so sacred and so necessary about a private practice, which online does give us. We're in the safety and the sanctuary of our own private space, where we get to have a really deeply interpersonal meaning inner with ourselves, right? Without any external gaze, judgment, agenda, pressure. And that's really where so many of us, the work begins to re-embody ourselves. So
you got it. Remember,
really
right?
glad
like
you,
the word remember, to member yourself back together.
Absolutely. So thank you for calling attention to that, because I think that it really is so important. Even
and what I love about Soul Sway, by the way, just to add and just give you guys props, is it's like once you actually have that practice that feels so safe and you guide everyone through in such beautiful, welcoming ways, then it gives the person doing the practice the courage to actually meet a real dance floor, IRL, and then find themselves in that courageous comfort of meeting their bodies in a shared space.
Yes.
I mean, now I'll be literally like at a construction site walking down the streets of New York, and if like a construction worker is playing music on their boombox, I'm dancing with. I mean, like I have zero embarrassment or shame. It's just become part of. When I hear music, I want to move and I want to dance, and it just feels so good. But it starts with this sort of inward journey of sort of, working through the courage to meet yourself. And it really is that's the word courage, which courage, like the word courage, comes from the word cœur, which means heart in French. Right? Courage starts with the heart.
Yeah. And it's, something that I think not a lot of people pay attention to is, well, where did the assignment of meaning get applied to where, when, and how we move our bodies? Our bodies are designed to move in all kinds of ways for all kinds of reasons. And where did the assignment of judgment or blame or shame or guilt or regret get placed on how, where, and when we move our bodies?
No, and also what are we putting inside our bodies?
Yes.
I mean, just honestly, someone who, I started Thinks, and just really, it's just like, we're the ones as women putting in the IUDs, putting in the
tampons,
all the contraptions, even not even just tampons, just like the things that stop us from getting pregnant. So like all of the
hormones and
yes, and that just changes our entire ecosystem. And then we're not even emanating the energy that is authentically ours, because there's so many different hormones raging inside of our bodies, and then we're attracting and magnetizing all the wrong friends, all the wrong lovers, because our bodies are now emitting different hormones, right? And so it's just paying attention to our bodies, and not just, again, being cut off at the mind. I think that's really where I continue to find so much inspiration in our work that we do. Belonging is not just human to human, but it's really mind to body, body to soul. It's really belonging to yourself first, so that you can go out and belong to the world, to the community.
So well said.
And it's a daily practice. And it's a daily practice.
It's a moment to moment practice. And it circles back to where, this sort of diversion in the conversation happened, which was you going, you've got to look for the holes in yourself. That's where you start. You've got to look for the places inside of yourself where something isn't aligned, where something isn't fulfilled, where something is being tolerated or gnawing at you and asking for you to pay attention.
That's right. I mean, I'm building my first ever altar. Like, I'm 45, and it's like to to not have built an altar up until now, again, being half Indian, half Japanese, our whole culture has sort of that type of altar space where you have your guru, or you have, sort of just your place of prayer and meditation. And again, because, us as Americans, I think one of the reasons we're becoming more lonely is that we are less and less spiritual. And so, one of the things for me that continues to be a daily practice, moment to moment practice, is this sort of connection to the spiritual realm. And so I'm building an entire altar. My bonsai tree just came. So I'm building an Indian Japanese altar to pay homage to both cultures. So
Yes.
my daughter can also begin connecting with her ancestors, right? And her culture and the spiritual realm in all these ways. And so we're building this together. We're going to the Little India in Jackson Heights, and I'm collecting all of these, tea sets. I'm about to get a certification in Japanese tea ceremony pouring, so that I could just like spend more time in this sort of prayer and spiritual space to continue belonging to myself and upgrading my own sort of inner landscape, and continue that own inward sort of journey to up level my spiritual practice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the embodiment of spirituality where energy meets matter, right? And so often we are out of balance in terms of we are so heavy in our humanity, which is very black and white. It is very predator prey.
That's right.
It is very, I've got to get closer to what I want and further away from what I don't. And it's looking for thread around every corner to its existence. And spirituality is the complementary opposite. It looks completely different in that it's not finite, it's infinite, in that it is not separate the way our bodies are. It is connected to everything all the time. I mean, our acronym for soul is source of unconditional love and trust. And soul is certainty because it's infinite. And when we are out of balance with that, right? When we're too heavy in our humanity and we are losing track of that trust.
You got it. Nailing it. Yeah. I developed a
huge
map, actually. I call it the compass of belonging, so that anyone who feels lonely can sort of look at this map and find this compass of belonging with these 4 directions, which is sort of an anthology of so many sort of indigenous practices, research, sort of East meets West, kind of a sort of an anthology of all of these sort of, wisdom teachings around belonging that I've distilled into this map. So it's sort of these 4 directions. In the north is the spiritual realm, which we just talked about, connecting when you feel lonely and lost. When you just touch the spiritual realm, you realize like, oh, wait, this is all bigger than me. I'm out of this meat suit. I'm now into a different realm. I get to relax in that knowing. So just connecting to a spiritual realm is so juicy and just, again, takes you out of loneliness. And the south is the earth, right? Just like stepping into this recognition that in indigenous cultures, there's no word for separate. There's no word for lonely, because we're all one with nature. And yet we think of nature through zeros and ones, carbon footprint, rather than the energetics of our connection to the planet, right? So it's like, so what is the south? So if I just ground and I just take a moment to connect with the earth, I no longer feel lonely. And then the west behind me is my lineage, my ancestors, which again, as Americans, we live in a quote unquote melting pot. So we've forgotten our ancestry. Like when I went to Cornell, for example, in dormitory floor, my first year dorm, I remember going around and just think, oh, where are you guys from? Like, and one lady, one girl was Asian. I was like, oh my God, where are your parents from? I'm half Japanese, half Indian. And she was like, oh, I'm American from Indiana. And I was like, oh no, but like where are your parents from? And she was like, oh, I mean, well, they're Chinese, but I'm American. And I just, there's a lack of homage to our ancestry in this country that makes us feel unmoored. We feel like we're not really in connection with where we came from. And just 10 generations, it took 2,000 people to get to us, right? Like one person, 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, 16 great, 32, 64, 128, right? And so on and so forth. And then just 10 generations, 2,064 people that it took to get to you. And yet we have forgotten all this lineage, this juicy lineage that helps us again reconnect to ourselves in ways that are so much bigger than our loneliness, and we feel less lonely when we connect there. And then finally, the East is our service. There's all these studies that talk about when you're in service of others, you get out of your own head and your own self sort of criticism and self perfectionistic spaces, and you focus on serving others, you get out of your own loneliness or your own landscape of where do I belong? And now all of a sudden you're in service. So you belong everywhere again. You belong to those that you're serving, and you feel less lonely. So when you follow this map, any direction will help you belong.
And how great to have a map, because we are human, and the nature of being human is to be selfish. We have to be in order to survive. We have to take care of ourselves. And in the same breath, right, there is this nature of being of service and tapping our spirituality by feeling connected to everything that isn't necessarily us. And that's a dance, and it's a beautiful dance, but having a map to it, beautiful, necessary, really necessary. How can people access this map if they want a visual of it?
Yeah, let's see. It is, I'm about to publish on social, on Instagram, on my Instagram, at love.radha. I'm sharing a whole video rubric that sort of kind of goes through each of these directions. And then I'm going to put a link in my link tree to be able to download it there. So
amazing. And we can put it in the show notes here once it's available.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because everybody's going to want to get
and
in
the
on
map
this
is
map.
so gorgeous. I had an African artist render the drawing because Lucy, the first human ever found, it was found in Africa. So just wanted to find an African artist to really render it, so to really kind of meet our humanity in this moment. And sort of like the compass is kind of like, the David image, Leonardo da Vinci's David, kind of
Hands of God. Oh, yes.
And,
okay.
No, the one with the wheel.
Oh, okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and instead it's a woman, and she's giving birth. She's pregnant with the earth in her belly.
Ugh.
Because again, belonging, we recognize that we were all born, every single one of us on the planet was born from another. And to not forget that as the foundation, that we are born from another human. We are, our DNA is in belonging from the moment, we're conceived. So
I'm not crying. You're crying. Oh my gosh. I just love it so much. Well, I also want to say that, I am so inspired by all of the arms of service that you have going on, right? Because it doesn't just live in a book, and it doesn't just live at Daybreaker, but you've launched Belong Center. Can you talk a little bit about the initiatives of Belong Center? And I say this because I'm involved in them. I've been leading Belong Circles, and I see the impact that they have, and all of the beautiful intention and resources that are being poured into this. I feel like this is a really good opportunity to just speak on that for a second.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for volunteering and being such an important member of our community at Belong Center and leading the charge in LA, especially in this moment right now. I want to talk to you separately about doing a Belong Circle for LA, as people are just losing all of their belongings and just needing that moment. So I really want to do an emergency Belong Circle moment. But Belong Center really started as a dream. As I was writing my book, I was thinking about, what are the additional impacts that this book can have. And I just imagine this book being a curriculum for our nonprofit, a new kind of community center, 2.0 community center that wasn't just like neon lights and PC computers, but that was really a hearth, a place of gathering that felt good to be there, that smelled delicious. We have a Belong scent and a Belong soundscape, and we have just a Belong juicy color palette and light bulbs that we make sure so it's a beautiful light, palette. It's not so harsh, and just, and we really want to create a space for anyone to come when they're feeling lonely or needing more social connection, or needing to practice how to be courageously connected, or just want a place to share, to come to have a free circle to show up and be a part of this community. But our mission for Belong Center is really to end loneliness, audaciously end loneliness, and build a culture of belonging for people and the planet. And when I say culture of belonging, and I think so often in the world of loneliness, people tackle this problem in a pathologized way, like something's wrong with you. Let me medicate you. Let me give you an emergency, suicide prevention number. Like there's so much in that pathologized space that something's wrong with you rather than culture making. So can we create so we're launching a block party program with the circles program. We have these yellow benches, circular benches that we're putting all over the country. We're doing a study, around social dance and social connection as it relates to our sense of loneliness and belonging. So everything that we're doing at Belong Center is focused on culture making. How do we actually build a culture of belonging, and do it in a way that's joyful and fun and inviting and magnetizing, rather than just like, sort of like that look of, worry and sadness, that so many solutions are offering right now, which is just like something wrong with you. We need to tackle these problems through the lens of, let's dance it out.
Yeah. And really unshaming the concept of admitting or owning or
You got it.
acknowledging that
That's
you're
the
lonely.
first thing. That's the first thing. Is like actually that's our most important kind of message and tenet right now, phase one, which is taking away the stigma
Yeah.
around our sense of loneliness, the shame. It's like what we did with Thinks, our underwear company, our
Mhm.
period underwear company. It was like there was so much stigma, back in even 2010, 2012. Just when you talk about your period, you're like, oh, your period, people would giggle and laugh.
Yeah.
And now it just all women, it's like it's the teen girls are just like free bleeding everywhere and talking about your periods is no
I
big
love it.
deal. And body positivity and all of that is just sort of, I would say, have come from destigmatizing the shame of our periods. So I really believe that as we destigmatize our loneliness, so much magic is going to come from that as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how much, I mean, even just in my coaching practice, how much relief people have. I mean, even embodied, you see their shoulders drop and you see their jaw relax and you see like an energetic shift and their heart open when you normalize something for them, when they realize, oh, I'm not the only person feeling this way. I'm not the only person who goes through this. In fact, it's actually the norm for most people is what I'm experiencing. But because we're all so closeted about it, nobody is aware that not only is there nothing to be ashamed of, that this is widespread and more than normal. It's like a uncomfortably normal. It shouldn't be this normal, right? And I think about that even in terms of like, as you're saying about the menstruation panties, like postpartum depression. How many women are openly talking about it now, but when you look to the generations past, that was not something that was to be discussed, just like menstruation or all of these other things. Now that can also tend towards the patriarchy, but I'm not going to go down that winding road today. But I think that it is something that if you're listening to this and there is something inside of you that like deep swallows, when you think about, yeah, I feel that way, but I would never really openly say that or would never really openly act on it. This is your permission slip. This is your moment to say, you know what? I identify with that and I don't need to be ashamed of it. I actually can step outside the limiting belief that loneliness is sort of my life sentence, and that there is some way in which I have to guard that and submit myself to it.
That's it. I'm actually pulling up right now. The Surgeon General just shared his parting prescription for America, and I just thought it'd be really interesting to underscore just all that we're talking about through the lens of this is the Surgeon General of the United States, and as he's leaving, as the Trump administration comes in, he shared his parting prescription for America, where he focused on 6 key pillars. But the main is just that his main kind of prescription is just that if we focus on connection, like social connection, purpose, and service, these 3 areas, if we just focus on that, we will be that is the kind of the prescription for a life well lived, for a happy life. It's
Just
just
the
social
holy trinity
connection,
here. Yes.
purpose, and service. Yeah, which I thought was really exactly in alignment with what I talked about, my compass of belonging and all my
Yes. I
work.
was going to
So
say it's on the
felt really
compass.
good. Yeah,
It's on the
yeah,
compass. Just go back to the compass.
exactly.
When in doubt, get your compass out, find your true north. We'll map it. We'll map it there, and we'll do it in community. We'll help
You
you.
got it. You got it. That's it.
We can all win here. We can all win here. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to do the two things that we do because we've looked at the past. We've certainly looked at the present. I want to forward face on the timeline is the first thing that I want to do. And then the second thing is to wrap up with our final closing question that we pose to everybody here on this podcast. But first, looking forward on the timeline, looking at the horizon, looking at the future, looking at what's coming, what's next, what's the intention, what's the forecast for you down the pike?
Yeah. So in 2 weeks, we're shooting a pilot for a TV series that on social connection that I'm working on with Dr. Vet Murthy, the Surgeon General's literally his head researcher. She wrote the Loneliness Report with and for him. She has 30,000 citations. She's the #1 foremost expert on social connection and loneliness. She is the person that anybody calls, including the Surgeon General, when needing research on loneliness. And we held a think tank this past weekend with her and a professor from UPenn, from the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program, and really thinking about how do we bring positive psychology, social connection research, and culture making together to change our cities, change our landscape. So the TV show is going to sort of be an edutainment show,
Yes.
where we teach America how to make their cities more socially connected, how to make their own lives more socially connected and less lonely. We're going to travel to America's loneliest cities. We're going to travel to America's most connected cities, and really teach America what's working, what's not working, with a research-backed and culture-making sort of lens. And we'll bring the purpose, service, and community piece to this pilot as well. So it's a very exciting project. So that we're shooting in 2 weeks. We're going to be pitching it to all the networks, and hopefully that'll be picked up, and we'll have now much more scaled audience to be able to talk to about this project and this mission in a way that's really fun and entertaining. So that's the first thing. I'm also writing a children's book series and on social connection as well, and with these sweet characters I'm developing to teach children how to belong. So I'm sort of building a whole universe this year that's beyond just our, of course, Daybreaker continues. We're launching a big tour. We're about to announce the name of the tour in the next week or so. It's going to be a 40-city tour all across the nation, especially, and each theme every year connects with what the moment is asking for. So we've titled the tour with a title and theme that I think is what America really needs right now. So stay tuned for that. So we have a big tour planned. We have a bunch of kind of more content-focused projects that we're working on, books that I'm writing, and more. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously the Belong Center will continue to do its work. There is just a lot happening.
Oh, yeah. And for the TV show, I mean, obviously we'll be featuring Belong Center in there, and you will be front and center for the LA community. And you've already been on my mind for being part of it. And also, of course, showcasing you as one of the unsung community leading heroes in your city with what you're doing with Soul Sway for teens and beyond. So really excited to continue showcasing all the community leaders that I know are doing incredible work in your communities on this show and beyond. So
I have to say, I certainly have had my share of working with thought leaders in my life, and celebrities and all kinds of things. And I have to say, one of my favorite things about you, before we get to the last question, one of my favorite things about you is how generous you are, but in walking the talk, right? You don't just talk about community, you actually legitimately cultivate it. You will take your expertise and you will share it. You will make introductions without feeling threatened, like it's going to somehow take anything away from you. I've been very, very aware of how beautifully you're filled with care, careful you are with the people that are in your community, and how just generous your spirit is and how much grace you imbue your communities with because of your generosity of spirit. And I just wanted to highlight that because you're the real deal. And that's not always what you find when you meet people in spheres of influence. So I really appreciate that about you.
That means a lot. And takes one to know one, sister. So,
well, here we are. Okay. Final question. We pose this to everybody on the show. And that is, I want you to imagine that you have a mirror in front of you, which you kind of do because we're on a screen. You can see yourself maybe. But imagine that you have a mirror in front of you. And given everything that we've discussed, right? Given the story of Radha all the way back from the beginning of the timeline until this present moment in time, and even everything that's coming, all the yous that you have been, really taking a moment to look in the mirror and see her in all of the existences that she has embodied, and let the external gaze just drop away, whether or not anybody else would measure you as successful or beautiful or, whatever. Anybody else's opinion just ceases to matter. The only one that matters is the one in the mirror. If you were to acknowledge and validate and honor that person in the mirror, what would you have to say?
I would just say that I'm grateful to care so much, to have a spirit of caring. I think that's care, curiosity, and I would say like an endless zest for life and living, and wanting to just suck the marrow out of this one beautiful life we're given. And I think that I would say would be my greatest values and how I see myself.
That's so beautiful.
How about you?
For me, nobody's ever asked me that before. Nobody's ever asked me my own question. What is going on here? Okay, hold. In this particular moment, it would be, I'm so fucking proud of you for pushing through what feels like a mountain of resistance to pursue your purpose because you know that's what you're here for. I know that's not easy. And I'm so proud of you. I love you.
Thank you for modeling that for me. I think I got the assignment wrong, but you crushed it.
You didn't, though. You really didn't. I mean, it's the essence of you recognize in yourself that you've allowed yourself to pursue sucking the marrow out of life, no matter what the cost, no matter what the circumstances. You have not allowed yourself to be complacent and not find and suck the marrow. That's what I would say.
I love it.
I love it too. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? This is live. We're really doing this. Oh God, I love you so much. We will absolutely offline after this, but can you, for everybody that wants to be part of your world, tell us one more time, where can people get in on all of the things Radha?
Well, first of all, I'm teaching a course that you took.
Oh my God, I can't say enough about this course. Everybody sign up for this course. No, I'm really not kidding. I took it. I did the online one. I did the in-person one at her home in Rhinebeck, which is just honestly such a game-changing thing. If you can do this, please do this. This is like I'm not being paid. I'm not getting a commission. I'm telling you, I personally did it and I give it more than 5 stars. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's it. I mean, I just want to invite anyone who has the courage and capacity to invest in building the community of their dreams to come and hang out with us and to join our community of community builders, which includes you. And in our cohort, our next cohort, our third ever cohort, starts on the 18th of February, and enrollment's happening now. I would love to either, welcome you to our online. It's an 8-week program this year.
Up from 6, y'all. I only got 6 weeks in mine.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying,
And then in person upstate. So that I get really excited to welcome everyone to hang out with me in person or online live. And that you can find us at belonginstitute.com. And then also you can find me on Instagram at love.radha or at DYBRKR Daybreaker or at Belong Center. So you can meet us for any one of our free circles that Alexis is also leading all across the country. We'll be in all 50 states by the end of this year. And actually, we're probably going to have some interesting updates for Belong Circles as well coming up that we're going to share with you soon too. But yeah, so those are all the places. And then daybreaker.com, sign up and come dance with us.
Come dance with us.
Yeah, daybreaker.com. You'd sign up and you find your city where you are, and then we'll start sending you our secret invitations.
Oh my goodness gracious. This is just all too much. I don't know what to say. I don't even know how to sign off, so I'm just going to do it. We love you. Thank you for being here, Radha. You are a unicorn. And to everybody tuning in, we'll see you next time. Love you all.
Join us for Look at Me Now, wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to share, like, and subscribe.